In the bustling streets of Oakland, California, a story was about to unfold that would touch hearts across the nation. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when 12-year-old Aaron Kirby walked into his room, his eyes fixed on the pristine pair of basketball sneakers he'd saved up for months to buy. These weren't just any shoes. They were Kevin Durant's signature sneakers, a symbol of hope and inspiration for a young boy who dreamed of playing basketball just like his hero. But today, those sneakers meant something entirely different. Aaron could hear his mother, Amanda Kirby, in the kitchen, trying to hide her tears as she spoke quietly on the phone with the electricity company. The past few months had been tough since she lost her job at the local diner. Bills had piled up, and despite working 2 part-time jobs, she was struggling to keep their small apartment's lights on. Aaron ran his fingers over the smooth surface of the sneakers, remembering the day he bought them. 6 months of saving up. His allowance, birthday money, and earnings from helping neighbors with yard work, all of it went into these shoes. But now, as he listened to his mother's muffled sobs, those sneakers suddenly felt less important than they did just moments ago. Without hesitation, Aaron carefully placed the sneakers back in their box and grabbed his phone. His hands trembled slightly as he took pictures of the barely worn shoes and posted them for sale online. KD signature sneakers, size 7, almost new. Selling for family emergency, he typed, his heart heavy but determined. Within hours, the shoes were sold, and Aaron handed the money to his mother that evening. Amanda was shocked when her son explained what he'd done, tears streaming down her face as she hugged him tightly. "You didn't have to do that, baby," she whispered, but Aaron just smiled, knowing he'd made the right choice. What Aaron didn't know was that his simple act of kindness was about to set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. The story of the boy who sold his prized sneakers to help his mother caught the attention of local social media, with people sharing screenshots of his selling post and the heartfelt reason behind it. As the story spread, it reached the desk of a local sports journalist, Marcus Duncan, who was moved by Aaron's selfless act. He began investigating the story, verifying the details through interviews with Aaron's neighbors and his mother's former colleagues at the diner. The story grew, touching hearts across the community, but its most significant impact was yet to come. One evening, as Aaron was helping his mother prepare dinner, their doorbell rang. Amanda opened the door to find Marcus Duncan standing there, a camera crew behind him, and someone else, someone whose presence would change everything. Kevin Durant himself stood in their doorway, holding a familiar orange shoebox. The NBA superstar had heard about Aaron's sacrifice and was deeply moved by the young fan's dedication to his family. But Durant wasn't just there to return the shoes. He saw in Aaron something that reminded him of his own childhood, the unwavering love for family and the willingness to sacrifice for those you care about. As Durant stepped into their modest apartment, Aaron stood frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief. The basketball star he'd watched countless times on TV, whose posters covered his bedroom walls, was standing in his living room. But more than that, Durant wasn't just there as a celebrity. He was there as someone who understood sacrifice and family. "I heard about what you did, Aaron," Durant said, his voice gentle and sincere. "Selling your favorite shoes to help your mom, that's the kind of character that matters more than any game, any score, any championship." The conversation that followed was captured by the cameras, but it was the genuine connection between Durant and Aaron that touched everyone's hearts. They talked about basketball, about family, about dreams, and about the importance of taking care of the people you love. Durant shared stories from his own childhood, about his mother's sacrifices, and how they shaped him into the person he became. As they talked, Amanda watched from the kitchen, her hands clasped together, tears of gratitude and amazement flowing. freely. Her son's simple act of love had brought them to this moment, and she couldn't have been prouder. But Durant wasn't just there to talk. He had a surprise that would change their lives forever. Reaching into his jacket pocket, he pulled out an envelope and handed it to Amanda. Inside was not just a check to help with their immediate financial struggles, but also something even more valuable: a scholarship fund for Aaron's education and a promise to mentor the young boy personally. "What you did, Aaron, shows that you understand what really matters in life," Durant said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "And I want to make sure you have every opportunity to keep being that kind of person, to keep making those right choices." The impact of Durant's visit extended far beyond that evening. News of his gesture spread quickly, inspiring others to reach out and help families in similar situations. Local businesses offered Amanda job interviews, and community organizations stepped forward to provide support services for families struggling to make ends meet. But the most significant change was in Aaron himself. The boy, who had simply wanted to help his mother, now understood that acts of kindness, no matter how small they might seem, could create ripples of change that touch countless lives. His sacrifice had not only helped his family, but had also inspired others to look beyond themselves and consider how they could make a difference in their communities. As Durant prepared to leave that evening, he had one more surprise. He handed Aaron a new shoebox. Inside were not just new signature sneakers, but shoes personally designed by Durant, with Aaron's name stitched on the side and a special message. "To Aaron, your heart is bigger than basketball. Keep shining." Shaka's story of Aaron Kirby and Kevin Durant became more than just a heartwarming tale of an NBA star's generosity. It became a reminder of the power of sacrifice, the importance of family, and how acts of kindness can transform lives in unexpected ways. Aaron's decision to sell his beloved sneakers had started as a simple gesture to help his mother, but it had grown into something that touched hearts across the nation and showed that sometimes the biggest victories in life happen far from any basketball court. In the days that followed, Aaron's story continued to inspire others. Letters and messages poured in from people sharing their own stories of sacrifice and family love. Local youth organizations began programs to help struggling families, naming them after Aaron's initiative. The ripple effect of one boy's selfless act continued to grow, showing that sometimes the smallest choices can lead to the biggest changes. And every time Aaron looked at his new sneakers, he was reminded not just of Kevin Durant's kindness, but of the lesson he'd learned. That true heroism isn't about how high you can jump or how many points you can score. It's about how much you're willing to give up for those you love. As the evening drew to a close, Durant shared one final thought with Aaron, words that would stay with him forever. "You thought you were just selling a pair of shoes, but what you really did was show the world what matters most. Keep that heart of yours, Aaron. It's your greatest strength." The cameras captured it all: the tears, the smiles, the hugs, and the promises made. But what they couldn't fully capture was the spark of change that had been ignited that day. A spark that would continue to grow and inspire others to look for ways they could make a difference in their own communities. The morning after Kevin Durant's surprise visit, Aaron Kirby woke up wondering if it had all been a dream. But there they were, the custom sneakers with his name, sitting proudly on his desk, a tangible reminder that yesterday had been very real. The sun streamed through his window, casting a warm glow on the shoes that now represented so much more than just basketball. News of Durant's visit had spread like wildfire through their Oakland community. Aaron's phone buzzed constantly with messages from classmates and friends who had seen the viral videos of the NBA star at his door. But what touched him most were the messages from strangers. people who shared their own stories of sacrifice and family love. One message in particular caught his attention. It was from a boy named Marcus Gonzalez, who lived across town. Marcus had sold his gaming console to help his single father pay for car repairs so he could keep driving to work. "Your story made me feel like I wasn't alone," Marcus wrote. "Sometimes doing the right thing feels hard, but seeing you and KD together makes it worth it." Amanda Kirby noticed a change in her son over the following days. Aaron walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and seemed to understand that his act of kindness had sparked something bigger than himself. The local news stations wanted interviews. Community organizations asked him to speak at their events, and even his school principal asked him to share his story at an assembly. But it wasn't the attention that moved Aaron. It was the opportunity to help others. He started noticing things he hadn't before: classmates wearing worn-out shoes, kids skipping lunch because they couldn't afford it, families struggling silently like his own had been. The awareness changed him, awakening a desire to do more. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Aaron spotted Chelsea Johnson, a quiet girl from his math class, sitting alone on the school steps. Her shoes were falling apart, held together with duct tape, and she was waiting for her mother, who worked late shifts at the hospital. Without hesitation, Aaron sat down beside her. "You know," he said, breaking the awkward silence, "I learned that sometimes asking for help is as brave as giving it." They talked for over an hour, and Aaron learned that Chelsea's family was struggling since her father's passing. That evening, he called Kevin Durant's foundation, remembering the NBA star's words. "This isn't just about one pair of shoes. It's about building a community that looks out for each other." Durant's response was immediate. Within days, not only did Chelsea receive new shoes, but her mother, Angela Johnson, was connected with resources and support services that helped stabilize their situation. The ripple effect of kindness continued to spread, touching more lives than Aaron could have imagined. The story caught the attention of local business owner Robert Wilson, who had grown up in the same neighborhood. Inspired by Aaron's initiative, he established a community support program, naming Aaron as its youth ambassador. The program aimed to identify families in need and connect them with resources, all while maintaining their dignity and privacy. Aaron's role as ambassador taught him valuable lessons about leadership and community service. He worked alongside adult mentors, learning how to organize events, speak in public, and most importantly, listen to people's stories with empathy and understanding. His mother watched with pride as her son grew into a young leader, his initial act of selling his sneakers transforming into a movement of compassion and support. Kevin Durant kept his promise of mentorship, checking in regularly through video calls and surprise visits. During one such call, Aaron shared his vision for a youth council that would help identify and address needs in their community. Durant didn't just support the idea, he helped make it happen, connecting Aaron with professional organizers and providing resources through his foundation. The youth council, named Steps Forward in honor of the sneakers that started it all, became a model for similar programs in other communities. Young people like Marcus Gonzalez and Chelsea Johnson joined, each bringing their own experiences and ideas for helping others. They organized shoe drives, tutoring programs, and family support initiatives, showing that young people could be powerful agents of change. Amanda Kirby found herself inspired by her son's growth. With the stability provided by Durant's support and her new job at a local community center, she started taking evening classes to complete her degree. "You taught me that it's never too late to dream bigger," she told Aaron one evening, as they sat reviewing proposals for the Youth Council's latest project. The transformation in their community was remarkable. What had started with one boy's sacrifice had grown into a network of support and hope. Local businesses began offering job training programs, community centers expanded their services, and people started looking out for each other in ways they hadn't before. Aaron's story reached other NBA players and athletes who began visiting the community and supporting similar initiatives in their own cities. The message was clear. Sometimes the biggest impacts start with the smallest acts of kindness. 1 year after Kevin Durant's first visit, Aaron stood on a stage at the community center, addressing a room full of people gathered for the Steps Forward anniversary celebration. Looking out at the faces in the crowd, Chelsea and her mother, Marcus and his father, Robert Wilson, and countless others whose lives had been touched by the program, he felt overwhelming gratitude. "A year ago, I thought I was just selling a pair of shoes to help my mom," Aaron began, his voice steady and confident. "I didn't know that decision would change not just our lives, but our whole community. Kevin Durant showed me that kindness has power, but all of you showed me that when we work together, that power grows." Durant, sitting in the audience, smiled proudly. The boy who had sold his sneakers had become a symbol of hope and change, inspiring others to look beyond themselves and consider how they could make a difference. The NBA star had seen something special in Aaron that day. Not just the sacrifice he'd made, but the potential to inspire others to do the same. The celebration wasn't just about looking back, it was about looking forward. Aaron announced new initiatives for the coming year: a mentorship program pairing high school athletes with elementary school students, a family resource center, and expanded youth council chapters in neighboring communities. As Aaron concluded his speech, he shared a lesson he'd learned over the past year. Sometimes we think we need to do big things to make a difference, but I've learned that the biggest changes often start with small choices, like selling a pair of shoes or sitting down next to someone who looks lonely, or simply asking someone if they need help. We all have the power to make those choices every day. The applause that followed wasn't just for Aaron. It was for every person in that room who had chosen to be part of the change, who had understood that community means looking out for each other, and that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to transform lives. As the evening wound down, Kevin Durant pulled Aaron aside. "You know what makes me proudest?" he asked. "Not just what you've done, but who you've become. You've shown these kids that they don't need to wait to be older or have more money or resources to make a difference. They just need to care enough to act." Aaron nodded, understanding now more than ever that his story wasn't just about sneakers or even about one act of kindness. It was about the power of community, the importance of looking out for each other, and the truth that sometimes the most meaningful changes start with the simplest choices. The transformation of Aaron Kirby's neighborhood continued to evolve in ways no one could have predicted. What started with a pair of sneakers had blossomed into a movement that was catching the attention of communities across the country. As summer approached, the Steps Forward program had expanded to include 15 youth chapters across Oakland, each led by young people inspired by Aaron's initial act of kindness. One particularly hot afternoon, Aaron sat in the newly renovated community center with Sarah Douglas, a local social worker who had become an integral part of their initiative. They were reviewing applications from kids who wanted to start their own chapters when Sarah noticed something remarkable in the patterns of requests. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a map they'd created to track the program's growth. "Every new chapter seems to spark 3 more within months. It's like watching hope spread across the city." The observation struck Aaron deeply. He remembered Kevin Durant's words from their last meeting. Change isn't just about helping people, it's about showing them they have the power to help others too. Now he was seeing that principle in action as each new chapter inspired more young people to step up and make a difference in their own neighborhoods. The program had evolved far beyond its original scope. What started as an emergency response system for families in crisis had grown to include mentorship programs, educational support, and even small business initiatives for struggling parents. Amanda Kirby, now completing her degree in social work, had become one of the program's most effective advocates, sharing her own story to help other parents feel comfortable seeking help. One of the most successful initiatives was the New Steps program, which paired high school athletes with elementary school students for mentoring and academic support. The program had caught the attention of other NBA players, and soon, professional athletes from various sports were getting involved in their own communities, replicating the model Aaron and Kevin Durant had created. The impact was particularly visible in the story of Michael Henderson, a 10th grader who had been on the verge of dropping out before joining Steps Forward. Through the program, he not only found support for his family's financial struggles, but also discovered his own leadership abilities. Now he was running one of the most active chapters in East Oakland, organizing weekly study sessions and basketball clinics for younger kids. One day, while Aaron was helping Michael organize a community event, he received an unexpected call from Kevin Durant. The NBA star had been watching the program's growth and had an idea that would take their initiative to the next level. Durant proposed a national youth leadership conference, bringing together young people from similar programs across the country to share ideas and strategies for community development. The announcement of the conference created a buzz of excitement throughout the Steps Forward network. Young leaders like Chelsea Johnson, who had gone from being a quiet girl with worn-out shoes to a confident chapter coordinator, began preparing presentations about their experiences and the unique ways they'd adapted the program to meet their community's needs. Planning for the conference revealed just how far the movement had spread. They received applications from youth leaders in cities across America, each with their own story of how Aaron's initial act of kindness had inspired them to take action in their communities. Marcus Gonzalez, now running a successful chapter in his neighborhood, worked tirelessly with Aaron to organize the logistics of bringing these young leaders together. The conference was scheduled for late summer at a convention center in Oakland. As the day approached, Aaron found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the fear and uncertainty he'd felt that day in his room, staring at his prized sneakers and hearing his mother's muffled sobs. He could never have imagined that his decision would lead to this moment. The opening day of the conference exceeded everyone's expectations. Over 300 young leaders from across the country gathered to share their stories and strategies. Kevin Durant's foundation had arranged for other NBA players and community leaders to attend as mentors and speakers, but the real stars were the young people themselves. During his opening speech, Aaron looked out at the sea of faces and felt overwhelming emotion. Each person in that room represented countless others whose lives had been touched by the ripple effect of kindness. He shared the stage with Michael Henderson, Chelsea Johnson, and other young leaders who had taken the basic idea of Steps Forward and transformed it in their own unique ways. The conference became a catalyst for even greater change. Young leaders formed networks across cities, sharing resources and ideas. They created online platforms to coordinate their efforts and track their impact. Local businesses and organizations, seeing the effectiveness of youth-led initiatives, increased their support and involvement. One of the most powerful moments came during a workshop led by Chelsea Johnson. She spoke about the importance of dignity in giving and receiving help, sharing her own experience of being the girl with taped-up shoes. "When Aaron approached me that day," she said, "he didn't make me feel like a charity case. He made me feel like part of a community. That's what this movement is about, building connections that lift everyone up." The media coverage of the conference brought national attention to the youth-led movement. news outlets featured stories of young people who had overcome their own challenges to help others, highlighting the ripple effect of Aaron's initial act of kindness. But more importantly, it showed other young people across the country that they had the power to make a difference in their own communities. Kevin Durant, watching the conference unfold, pulled Aaron aside during a break. "You know what makes this special?" he asked. "It's not just about helping people anymore. It's about changing how people think about help. These kids aren't waiting for someone else to fix things. They're stepping up themselves." The conference concluded with an announcement that would ensure the movement's continued growth. Durant's foundation, along with several other NBA players and corporate sponsors, pledged to support the establishment of Steps Forward chapters in 50 more cities over the next year. Each chapter would receive initial funding, mentorship, and support to adapt the program to their local needs. As the young leaders prepared to return to their communities, armed with new ideas and connections, Aaron realized that the true power of their movement wasn't in the programs they created or the resources they provided. It was in the way it changed how people saw themselves and their ability to make a difference. The conference's final session was a strategic planning meeting for the year ahead. Young leaders broke into regional groups, mapping out ways to expand their impact and support each other's initiatives. The energy in the room was electric as ideas flowed and connections strengthened. Amanda Kirby, watching her son facilitate one of these planning sessions, couldn't hold back her tears of pride. The boy who had sold his sneakers to help pay their electric bill had grown into a young man who was helping transform communities across the country. But more than that, he had helped create a movement that empowered other young people to become agents of change in their own neighborhoods. As the conference came to a close, Aaron stood with Kevin Durant, watching the young leaders exchange contact information and make plans for future collaboration. "You know what's amazing?" Aaron said. "Every person here has their own version of the sneaker story. They all made that choice to help someone else, even when they didn't have much themselves." Durant nodded, understanding that the true success of their initiative wasn't measured in the number of chapters or programs created, but in the way it had changed how young people saw their own potential to make a difference. The movement they had started wasn't just about providing help. It was about creating a new generation of leaders who understood that everyone has the power to create positive change. 3 years had passed since Aaron Kirby first listed his Kevin Durant sneakers for sale, and the world had changed in ways he never could have imagined. The Steps Forward movement had grown into a national network of youth-led community support programs with chapters in over 200 cities across America. But today, Aaron found himself back where it all began, in his old neighborhood, standing outside the community center that had become the heart of their movement. The occasion was special. They were celebrating the opening of the Durant Kirby Youth Leadership Academy, a permanent institution dedicated to training the next generation of community leaders. The building, once a rundown recreation center, had been transformed into a state-of-the-art facility with classrooms, meeting spaces, and a basketball court that would serve as both a training facility and a community gathering place. As Aaron walked through the building with Kevin Durant, they passed walls decorated with photos documenting the journey of their movement. There was the original viral post of Aaron's sneakers for sale, the first visit from Durant, the inaugural Youth Council meeting, and countless moments of community transformation that had followed. "Remember when you thought you were just selling a pair of shoes?" Durant asked, stopping at a photo of their first meeting. Aaron smiled, remembering how overwhelming that moment had felt. Now at 15, he understood that sometimes the smallest actions could lead to the biggest changes. The Academy's first class was set to begin next week, with 50 young leaders selected from communities across the country. Each student had their own story of how they'd been inspired to make a difference in their neighborhoods. Among them was Lisa Harrison, a 14-year-old from Chicago who had started a food security program in her housing complex, and James Young, a 16-year-old from Atlanta who had developed a mobile tutoring service for kids whose parents couldn't afford after-school programs. The curriculum they had developed went beyond traditional leadership training. It included practical skills, like project management and public speaking, but also focused on emotional intelligence, community engagement, and the importance of maintaining dignity in service to others. The students would spend 6 months at the academy, then return to their communities with the skills and resources to expand their impact. As people began arriving for the opening ceremony, Aaron spotted familiar faces in the crowd. There was Marcus Gonzalez, now running multiple chapters in the Bay Area, Chelsea Johnson, who had developed a successful mentorship program for girls, and Michael Henderson, whose academic support initiative had helped dozens of students get into college. Amanda Kirby, now a licensed social worker and the Academy's family support coordinator, stood at the entrance greeting guests. She had completed her degree while helping expand the Steps Forward program, becoming a role model for other parents who were working to improve their situations while supporting their children's involvement in community service. The ceremony began with a speech from Mayor Thomas Lawrence, who spoke about how the youth-led movement had transformed the city's approach to community support. These young people showed us that sometimes the best solutions come from those closest to the challenges, he said. They taught us that leadership doesn't have an age requirement. When it was Aaron's turn to speak, he looked out at the gathered crowd, a mix of community members, program participants, supporters, and most importantly, the incoming class of Academy students. He thought carefully about what message he wanted to share with these young leaders who would carry the movement forward. 3 years ago, I made a choice that seemed small at the time, he began. I sold my favorite sneakers to help my mom pay the bills. I didn't know that choice would lead to all of this, but what I've learned since then is that every act of kindness, every decision to help others, creates a ripple effect that can transform communities. He went on to share stories of how the movement had evolved, highlighting the innovations and adaptations that different chapters had developed to meet their local needs. He spoke about the importance of dignity in giving and receiving help, about the power of youth leadership, and about the way their initiative had changed the conversation about community support. Kevin Durant then took the stage, announcing a new commitment from his foundation and other NBA players to support the Academy's expansion. The plan included establishing similar training centers in other cities and creating a scholarship program to ensure that financial barriers wouldn't prevent young leaders from participating. The most moving part of the ceremony came when several program beneficiaries shared their stories. Among them was Angela Thomas, a single mother who had received support from Steps Forward during a difficult time and had gone on to start her own small business with help from the program's entrepreneurship initiative. Her testimony highlighted how the movement had evolved to address not just immediate needs, but also long-term stability and growth. After the formal ceremony, as people mingled and explored the new facility, Aaron found himself back in the gymnasium, standing center court. The space was more than just a basketball court. It was designed to be a community hub where young people could come together to play, learn, and develop their leadership skills. Chelsea Johnson joined him there, remembering their first conversation on the school steps 3 years ago. "You know what's amazing," she said. "That day you didn't just help me get new shoes, you showed me that I could be part of something bigger than myself." The day's events concluded with a special surprise: the unveiling of a new line of Kevin Durant signature shoes, with proceeds going to support the Academy's programs. The first pair was presented to Aaron with a special inscription that read, "To the kid who taught us all, that sometimes giving up something you love can help you find something you love even more. As the sun set on the opening day of the Durant Kirby Youth Leadership Academy, Aaron sat in the quiet of the empty gymnasium, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The movement they had created wasn't just about helping people in need. It was about changing the way communities supported each other, about empowering young people to be leaders, and about showing that everyone has the potential to make a difference. The next morning, as the first class of Academy students arrived for orientation, Aaron stood with Kevin Durant, watching these young leaders begin their journey. Each of them had their own story, their own version of the sneaker moment that had inspired them to take action in their communities. "You know what makes me proudest?" Durant said, looking at the gathering of young leaders. "It's not just what we've built here, it's knowing that these kids will take what they learn and create something even better in their own communities." Aaron nodded, understanding that the true success of their movement wasn't in the buildings they'd constructed or the programs they'd created, but in the way it had changed how people saw their own potential to make a difference. The sneakers that had started it all were now displayed in a case in the Academy's entrance hall, a reminder that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices. As he watched the new students introduce themselves and share their stories, Aaron realized that their movement had come full circle. What had started as one boy's act of sacrifice for his mother had grown into a national network of young leaders working to transform their communities. But more importantly, it had created a new narrative about the power of youth leadership and the importance of community support. The story of the sneakers that changed everything had become more than just a viral moment or a heartwarming tale. It had become a blueprint for community transformation, a reminder that age is not a barrier to leadership, and proof that when young people are given the opportunity to lead, they can create lasting positive change.